Now that we have this understanding of how to prove triangles congruent, the next step is to move into something that is known as corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. We abbreviate that using this CPCTC abbreviation. Now, what it means is if I'm able to say that two triangles are congruent, then I can pull out any pair of corresponding sides or any pair of corresponding angles and conclude that they are congruent. Now, the key to when can I use CPCTC is first, I must prove triangles congruent before I can use CPCTC. So I can only use CPCTC after I have proven that triangles are congruent. So let's take a look at a few proofs here together, see how we do this. First one, I'm going to take the given information, which is already marked on the picture, and I'm going to start by listing what it is. So angle KBC congruent to angle ACB, and I'm also going to say angle K is congruent to angle A. I know those are true because they are given and I see them in the picture. Now, if I look at that top triangle and I look at that bottom triangle, somehow I'm going to have to state that those two triangles are congruent using either side, 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 angle, or angle, angle, side. One thing that jumps out at me is I notice that this side is a shared side. So I'm going to start by making that conclusion, or that statement I should say, that from the first triangle, segment BC is congruent to its counterpart, and I'm going to be careful on how I name it. I'm going to name from the second triangle the same side, but I'm going to call it CB. Notice how I start and line up the letters so that they're going to line up in the triangle congruency statement. Now, with that information, I have angle, angle, side, angle, angle, side. So let me come back here. BC is congruent to CB. Why would that be the case? That's a reflexive property of congruence. Remember, anytime we're saying something's equal to itself, that's reflexive. So now I can say what I was saying before, that the two triangles are congruent. And I'm going to call the first one triangle BKC, and that's going to be congruent to triangle, let's see, B has to match with C, then A, then B, CAB. I know that those triangles are congruent because of the angle, angle, side theorem. Now that I have that they are congruent, I should now be able to prove the statement that they want me to prove, that these two sides are congruent. If I look down here, I've got BK, which remember we can read as KB, and it has to match with CA, which remember we can say as AC. Well, that's the statement that they want me to prove. So my final step would be segment KB is congruent to segment AC. And my reason is this new thing that we're talking about called corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, or CPCTC. All right, let's look at a second scenario. So here we've got two triangles again. I'm going to try to prove that they're congruent because they're asking me to prove these angles are congruent. And the only way those angles can tie together is if I know that the triangles are congruent. I'm going to start with my given, BA congruent to DA, and CA congruent to EA, because they are given. Now I look at the picture. There's no way for me to identify that CB and ED are congruent, so I'm not going to use side, side, side. I can, however, say that this angle is congruent to this angle. I know those two angles are congruent because they're vertical. So I'm going to carefully name each angle. I have to use 3 letters. I'm going to call it angle CAB, and that's going to have to be congruent to angle EAD. Notice how I'm really concentrating on marking off or naming the the vertices in the correct order. All right. I know those two angles are congruent because vertical angles are congruent. And now that gives me enough to say this triangle on the left is congruent to the triangle on the right. So let me make that statement now. Triangle CAB is congruent to triangle EAD. And my reason for that would be side angle side. Now that I know that the two triangles are congruent, can I pull out this proved statement from, remember, when triangles are congruent, 6 things are true? Is this one of them? C, E, yep, I can verify it. So step 4 would be to say angle C, congruent to angle E, and my reason for that is this idea of CPCTC. All right, let's try one more proof. So here's one. They're going to start us off by saying the sides they have marked are congruent. So let's write that down. That AB is congruent to AC. And then they give me a second statement here that says M is the midpoint of BC. And I know both of these are true because they are given. The challenge is to prove that triangles are congruent, I need 3 congruency statements to either use side, 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 angle, or angle, angle, side. Right now, I only have 1 congruency statement. So in this problem, I need to find 2 more congruency statements. I'm going to explore what this M is the midpoint means. So if M is the midpoint of BC, I know that that little piece and that little piece have to be congruent because of the definition of midpoint. So let's write that. BM congruent to CM, and my reason would be the definition of midpoint. All right, so now I have 2 congruencies. It's still not enough to prove that the triangles are congruent, but I'm on the right path. If I look at the picture as a whole, I notice that this side right here is a shared side. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to say that segment AM is congruent to segment AM, and that would be because of the reflexive property of congruence. And now I have that the 2 triangles are congruent. So let's state that. Triangle ABM must be congruent to triangle ACM. And my reason for this would be side, side, side. Now, is that going to give me enough information to pull that out? Let's see. AMB AMC. So if I'm checking my triangles here, yeah, I can make that statement. Statement 5 says angle AMB must be congruent to angle AMC. And because I knew that the triangles were congruent, my reason here would be CPCTC. I hope this helps. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.